Hi there, I'm Adam Green. Welcome to the Social Media Help Desk. This is the time every week where we chat about what's going on in the world of social media. And we're once again live from the Atlanta office. And I'm joined by content editor JC.
Hello.
Today we're going to go over the current news and events in social media. Things like whether Google holds your website to a higher standard, what kind of tactics you're using that are starting to bury your social media, as well as some interesting stories. So let's start right off with the current news. One of the big deals, especially for people like us that are content creators, is Facebook's adding now licensed music into your ability to make posts.
Right, you can see that they saw the success of TikTok with the younger generations and thought we could probably do that, but even better. So they're going to be, there's a variety of different features. A lot of the features, like I said, that TikTok has, such as singing along in certain videos and then having licensed music directly that you can share on the platform and listen to it, particular music that's like on the iTunes store.
Right, and it's obviously not all music, and there's obviously going to be restrictions. I don't think they published a comprehensive list of what they have on there, but essentially what you said, it's essentially what you have in iTunes that you're able to use. But that's also big because, you know, putting good music behind your content is huge. That's always going to engage people. It always makes your content a little bit more enjoyable for people to watch, and even if they're not a huge fan of what you have on there as content, they might just stick around and listen to the song. So it's kind of an interesting tool to play with.
It's interesting how Facebook's becoming more and more like MySpace used to be.
That is an excellent point, actually. Pretty soon they're going to let us decorate our page with glitter and GIFs and things that make it impossible to read. Not sure if I'm ready to go back to those days, sadly. And in the world of Twitter, they are now trying to be a little bit more like Facebook. It seems like everybody's impersonating everybody. And so we were talking about before we started Twitter's attempt to make us live chat with people.
Right. The CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, has essentially publicly asked for help in reducing the amount of toxicity and abuse and misinformation that's on his platform. One thing that Twitter is notorious for is the infighting and the propaganda.
Yes.
And one of the methods that he's trying to use to cut that down is going to be these Twitter chats, these Twitter live chats, which is very similar to Facebook, as we were talking about before, where two people are communicating on the same hashtag. Sometimes they'll be connected or hooked up. In this way, they can have a more open, positive, real-time dialogue.
And there aren't details on how they're going to connect people. Presumably, like if you're in the same hashtag as somebody else, we're assuming they're going to either put your content in front of somebody or put somebody's content in front of you. They may have a live messaging service, like you were saying, just like Facebook chats where they pop up. We get that on Twitter. And there was also a rumor that he might want to get rid of the like button as well in order to help facilitate more positive interactions and foster debate. But this seems like a strange world for Twitter.
Well, another quote from Jack Dorsey is that he says he's willing to question everything in regards to the foundation for Twitter. He wants to change everything about Twitter, the way that it operates, and I think this is one step in that direction where he's trying to fundamentally change what Twitter is.
Right, which could potentially be a huge boon. If you're a brand on Twitter, there's always been kind of speed bump when you're trying to get in there because ads work, they don't always work. Hashtags can usually go by very, very quickly if you're using a popular one. So this is going to be another way that might get your content put in front of more people, and at the very least, get you meeting and networking with different people. So it may be an interesting function, but I believe it's just in beta currently. But if you're one of those people who's been able to get into the beta or seen that functionality, let us know, because we would love to see more on it.
And speaking of platforms that are completely redoing everything that they've done, Snapchat continues to have struggles, and ever since their IPO was a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Ever since that IPO, they've had a high executive turnover. They've been panned for their redesigns, and even there's partnerships that, in their efforts to monetize, that have just dissolved.
Snapchat doesn't really seem like they know what they're doing. It was one of those explosive apps that just took over the world. Years and years ago, probably 6-7 years ago, and it was just completely ubiquitous. And then, as the idea of monetizing it came in, they had great success with people staying on ads when they put them in between stories. So there was definitely a lot of success, but that's since kind of dwindled as people are more using Instagram stories and they're going to platforms with a little bit better functionality. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, and if they get away from their messaging and pictures disappearing, just to try to do something new or different or have a little bit more sticky potential. It's an interesting app. I think in a year or so, it's going to be massively different platform. So, if you're on Snapchat and you have success and you still love it, that's fantastic. But be ready for some major changes for sure. On that note, with all of the rapid changes that always happen in social media, every single day we're finding out something new. One of the constant battles is making sure that we keep website traffic and website rankings high. And we've talked about this a few times, but you recently wrote about a much larger development with how Google ranks. And I'll let you kind of tell people about this YMYL.
A bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I did write a little bit about YMYL pages, your money or your life. It sounds like a stick-up, but in reality, it's literally about your money or your life. Pages that either have to do with people's finances, have to do with legality, or just in general have to do with general wellness and happiness. The way that Google puts it is that any page that can potentially impact the future happiness, health, financial stability, and safety of users. More or less, they just want to make sure that pages that can positively or negatively impact your life and give you guidance in certain very precarious aspects of life are accurate, and that people that are using those pages are getting the information that they need.
So how do they determine that?
Well, there's a number of quality indicators that they look for, that they pull from Google Analytics and the back end of your website. A few of those would include your site's reputation. So if you're getting linked back to by professional organizations, or sites that are also associated with the subject matter. So for instance, if you're a banking website, or if you have banking functionality on your website, they want to see that you're being linked to by major news organizations and such. In addition, they want to see that your page has a lot of positive performance, so that people, when they visit your site, they're staying on your site, that they're reading all your content, and that once they leave your site, they're not continuing to search for the same issues.
So when you jump back out of a page and then you retype in the same search, like how to get out of debt.
Yeah, that would reflect very poorly on your web pages.
I don't think many people realize that Google isn't just tracking what's happening on your website, it's tracking what the consumer is doing and putting you in a larger bucket.
Exactly. And the thing about this is, because of performance indicators, you can't hold people, you can't force them to stay on your website. So you have to have a very well laid out, very easily navigated website, or otherwise you're at risk of being put into a category of pages that they're not going to rank. And it can also diminish your domain authority. So if people are just looking up your name in general, they might not be able to find your website because they've determined that your website doesn't have these quality indicators, which can reflect very negatively overall. It's something that's very hard to fake, and it's something that, even if you don't think that you really need to be involved with Google ranking your page very highly for certain issues, it affects your site overall. It's not just with search, it's with the way that your site's treated in general. If people are using search engines to find you at all, this is a very important matter to be concerned with.
And you mentioned things when you wrote about this, like we have talked about things like keep your content fresh, keep the backlinks, and it doesn't always sink in how important that is for pages.
Right.
But things like you need to keep fresh content, especially if you are a financial page or somebody that's in an industry that constantly changes and there's new regulations, etc.
Exactly.
If you're not keeping up to date with that stuff, and maybe not day and date, but if something happens that week, you need to have something within a couple of days. Otherwise, Google is looking at you and basically telling people you're not giving them correct information or current information.
And in the same vein, what they're also looking for is that your site is, that you're reputable. So I mentioned reputation briefly, but having a very visible contact us or about us page, customer service pages, and especially making sure that when people are visiting your website, that they're able to that they're able to verify and see that you've been talked about before, and that you're not simply just like that you're not simply just taking up space on the web, and that you're not just trying to get their clicks. That kind of stuff is very important, especially for Google, and they're able to track that very, very efficiently.
And that actually, it comes into the accessibility section, where it's like not only accessible to your clients or your potential visitors, but just the ease of how your site navigation works as well, I assume, correct?
Right, exactly.
So when Google is crawling your website, looking at your pictures, looking at your name, so they're looking at the navigation and how you can work around the page. So there's a lot of indicators on there, actually. How negative does it affect your rankings if you aren't keeping the fresh content, if you aren't getting the backlinks?
So there's positive indicators and negative indicators. So a positive indicator would help you rank better. If you don't have any indicators whatsoever, then they'll just put pages that give useful information above yours. And then negative indicators like hard to navigate website, high bounce rate, those are things that tell Google like this is a page like for a disreputable website, and they'll perhaps even lower your domain authority.
Interesting. So it can have some massive negative impacts. For not doing this thing. So that's interesting. How long have they been looking at it through the YMYL lens?
This update has been something that's been kind of slowly creeping in, and if you could probably look back to updates from last year where they started to take on this role, but really it was said by name in a recent update that came in this late this summer.
Okay, interesting. So if you are not keeping up on your webpage or not keeping up on your content, that is, you're going to notice the negative effects very, very quickly. And that's one of those things that's why we do website audits, is to make sure that you are matching up to all of these all of these metrics, and it becomes more and more important. So yeah, it's interesting seeing these changes and how much it really makes you stay on the ball and makes us stay on the ball.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's not necessarily that you have to, like I said, this stuff's very hard to fake, but if you're a reputable website and you're a good company and you know what you need to know and you can convey that easily to your customers, all it takes is a qualified web developer and just a good team that understands SEO, and they can easily put this stuff together.
And this comes into your social media as well.
Exactly.
What channels are feeding into your website. You can have an incredible website, but having negative social feedback, your page is not working well, not keeping your Facebook updated, that stuff all flows into each other.
Right.
And that was, in the spirit of the season, we recently had a blog going up about what we're calling zombie social media tactics. And this is one of the, this is something we see a lot of clients do before they come to us, especially where, we obviously audit everything we see that comes in. And there are tactics where people get lazy. You're busy, especially if you're running your brand, if you're a business owner, you are going. You don't really have time to stop. And social media is one of those things that can kind of fall by the wayside. And for many, many years, people in our industry, people that are just, even people that are managing their own personal Twitter accounts, have used automation. There's scheduling on Facebook. There's things like Hootsuite, Buffer, and that automation made life much, much easier. But the problem is that a lot of people got into those ruts, and you are now hurting yourself over time. So things that we were looking at were very much about polluting your own data was one of the biggest problems with these zombie tactics. If you are not doing anything new, if you're not moving in and trying to update your brand, and you're just sort of doing the same old, you're not going to get the data that you need. Especially because by doing those old things, you're going to be looking at the old metrics. When you're used to putting things up on Twitter and you go to look at X, Y, and Z, those might not be the metrics you want to use right now. So you're not only being repetitious, you're not getting any of the data.
And similar to what Google's doing, where they're recognizing that they want quality pages being shown first, they want social media, these social